Welcome to the Ambiences chapter. In this chapter, we're going to talk about mono ambiences, how to take a mono ambience and turn it into a stereo one that works, dealing with stereo ambiences, surround ambiences, and then how to layer ambiences in a surround and multi-surround 3D environment so you get that juicy, rich immersion. And then we're going to go to our example scenes and drop in ambiences and show you how to do it. Let's roll. Now, there's no better example, maybe anywhere, of great immersion than the opening of Master and Commander. Just listen to this. Listen to what all is in here. And then we cut to outside. Notice the ocean. Just so subtle and so beautiful. You are there with those men on that little ship. So what's all the big deal about ambiences? Why do we need them? It's just a bunch of whatever, right? It's just underneath it all. And it's so low in the mix, you're like, who cares, right? I'll just use room tone and be done. Well, here's the thing. You can do that. It just kills your immersion. Why? Because the brain can process 7,000 distinct things every second and can focus on only 4. So what our brain is doing mainly is tuning things out all day, all night for most of our lives. The vast majority of its impulses are tuned out. So if we want to get our audience into subconscious sleep, which we do want to do, we have to give the audience as many impulses as we can in order to do that. And ambiences are one of the best ways I can think of to do it. Just imagine yourself in an anechoic chamber where there's no sound at all, where it's just absolute quiet. Now, from what I understand, people use that to torture people because they go insane. I actually kind of liked it when I was in the one at Rode, but it's really disconcerting, very disconcerting. And in your movie, if you're either in, a theatrical movie theater, cinematic theater, or you're in headphones, if there's no underlying noise or immersion that your brain can tune out, your brain won't tune it out and it will stay present to the environment in which it's really in. In this case, you're in an airport with headphones on. The airport will keep you from being immersed. Or if you're in a theater, the sounds of the theater, the actual room, will keep you from being immersed in the film. Ambiences are like the glue of your project that will keep that audience stuck to the ground of your story and your characters and your plot line and all of that like nothing else can. So we want to get ambiences right. We don't want to just throw them off like they're just this thing I do. Now here's the other thing. If you get into surround channels, it gets geometrically, logarithmically, exponentially, depending on your religion, harder. Stereo, not that hard. Put a couple things up and left and right and you're done. But with surround channels, you've got left and right, and then you've also got left and right surround. And don't think for a second that you can put the same thing in the front as you have in the back. Usually it needs to be somewhat, if not strongly, strikingly different back there, because that's how real world earring brain stuff works. If you're looking at a building, but there's traffic behind you, that's a very different sound from here to there, right? So keep that in mind. And you got to deal with panning. And now you're not just panning left to right, you're panning things in a surround. So if there's a camera reversal, a lot of times your ambiences have to reverse. So it's a lot more difficult, but it's a lot more immersive. And then when we get into height speakers and all kinds of 3D surround, it gets even more really, really deep. In fact, you may find yourself with 40 to 50, maybe 60 tracks of just ambiences for your project, which in my mind is super dope.
Dope.
Let's check it out.
There's many different kinds of ambiences that you use to match the kinds of things that you're seeing in the production while we're working in post. I just want to show you some of them. Some of these are pretty obvious, but let's just go through them anyway. So generally, you've got calm, room tone, industry jungle, space, spaceships, and urban. I mean, there's all kinds of things, whatever you've got to do. But I want to just bring in some of these so you can kind of see what this is about, because it may not be self-evident. Here's just a room tone. And I don't know if you can hear it. You can see that it's working, but it's extremely low. And if I pull this down, you can see there's very little voltage there, if you could, for lack of a better term. And it's pretty quiet. But that's a correctly recorded room tone. And we can bring it up here. And it's pretty nice. If we look at it in the spectral view, double click. There's just not a lot of here. There's not a lot in the high frequencies. There's kind of this mid-rangey bump kind of thing. And it's nice. And, people listen to room tones like this at this kind of level. In fact, we can just turn it up even more. And you're like, well, that sounds terrible. That sounds horrible. Well, yeah, it totally does, because a room tone never sounds like this. In fact, the room you're in right now probably has a very similar tone to what this room sounds like. If you were to take off your headphones, or if you're there, just be quiet and listen. You've got, whether you have traffic or not, there is a low frequency to mid frequency hum that's there. And it's very, very low. Very low, 2 fingers. So when you get room tone, you want to mix this, and we'll talk about this in the mix section, but placing is one thing, but we want to mix this so low that we just forget about it. We never want to hear room tone. It should just be the glue that keeps the mix together. I'll show you another one here. Room tone, here's this one. This is a mono room tone. And when you listen to it, you're like, well, it sounds like a factory. I know. And, in a very quiet room, there's all kinds of machines and everything else running. Here's another different one. It's a beautiful, beautiful room tone. I'll show you another one. This is 2 halves of a whole. I'll just give you one side of it. Actually, no, I'll give you both. We'll put both in here. We'll pan one left, we'll pan one right. Oops, I just did that wrong. Sorry, that was the wrong thing to do. Here we go, pan left and pan right. Pretty nominal. So yeah, that's your room fill. Pretty simple stuff, but just don't be confused about why they sound funny when you bring them up. They should sound funny when you bring them up to listen to them at a regular level. Now here we go, industry background, another mono. Now, industry is one of the rare ones that you may be hearing as something that's a part of almost a sound effect, because industry, like if you're in a factory or something like this, is going to be loud, and it won't be so far in the background that that you're not hearing it. But when we mix these, we do want the ambiences to be far enough back where they're not acting like sound effects. They would be loud enough to be considered sound effects, but we want, when somebody moves a lever on something and we have to make that as a sound effect, we don't want that to be in ambiences. We want ambiences just to be in the background. It's even in the file name, BG. Here's a little short version. Sounds like a printer or something. And it's a beautiful sound, but we'd mix it down here. That's where that would want to live. It's a really beautiful sound, but it's going to get in the way of our dialogue. You can see what this one's going to sound like. And we have it here, so it's under dialogue, just right. Lovely. Here we go. I love this one, the whirring. Awesome. And these are all perfectly good industry. A well-labeled one, track 1. And with ambiences, a lot of time they do this, where they fade this thing out. You never want to get anywhere near a faded out ambience track. That you want to be doing your cross fades or whatever long before that, because that fade out that they've helped you with is so useless, has no value. They just do it to be nice. When you record your own ambience libraries, make sure you don't have fades in them. It's just really, really obnoxious. And then jungles, come on, you know about jungles. There's no problem. Come on, back here. And even though those birds are going to poke through, they're definitely not sound effects. You can add them as sound effects later, but in your ambiences, they're never going to be sound effects. I have no idea what those animals are, but you would be in a very strange South American jungle for sure. But it's a legit ambience. Here's another one. Pretty rare, maybe, that you're going to be doing some kind of predator film. Otherworldly ambience. It's pretty cool. Now, I want you to notice in this one, look at the massive difference in the waveform between left and right. At least visually, they look like completely different tracks. And even in the spectrogram, they look pretty different. That versus that. They are pretty different, and it gives it a really nice, wide, stereophonic feel. All right, let's listen to some more rooms. How about one with a little ventilation noise? And you're like, well, there's that crazy hum in there. Would we want to get rid of it? Well, we definitely want to get rid of it out of our dialogue track, but in an ambience, not really. We want to add that stuff back in, because the more things we add back in that the brain tunes out, the more immersion we have and the more manipulation of our audience we have. This one's a little more subtle. Got some nice high-pitched fans in there, which is nice. With very something. Sound like somebody's in there. Somebody's in there moving around. But great ambiences for more rooms. Here's some space, sub-rumble. You're going to love this if you've got headphones or subwoofer. That's all it needs to be for a nice little background space, just some ambient radiation. Here's another one. A little more active. What happens over here? Distortion, that's what happens. Boo, hiss, right? Sometimes they're not as nice with their ambiences as they should be, and we just run those into RX and get them fixed. This is a good example of an ambience that is a pulse. And sometimes ambiences are like this. They're not just a static thing. They're pulses, because it adds a certain amount of weirdness. They did this back in the 50s and 60s quite a lot. We don't do it so much anymore, but you can, especially if you layer it with constant ambiences. It can be super cool. Spaceship interior. Look at this cool thing. Right? Constant, not in the way of anything at all. Spaceship interior ambience. Now that's going to get in the way of the dialogue, and it's a little short. We generally want our ambiences to be 30 seconds or more. This is just shy of it. And the reason for that is, again, if I have to cut off these fades, these abysmal fades, now this is very short, and if I loop it, it can be heard as a loop. Right, there it comes, that high pitch again. You're like, oh, I just heard that. Well, oh, Mark, I could reverse it. Yes, just stick with 30 seconds. Stick with 30 seconds. All right, last but not least is urban. We're all pretty familiar with this. Most of us live in some kind of an urban environment. Big motorcycle come by. And this stuff you have to be careful with because they're really full bandwidth frequency, high frequencies, low frequencies, mid frequencies, transients, all kinds of things. And a lot of times we need to put a compressor on them to make sure we don't have stuff sticking through, especially like car horns like this one in mono. That stuff is right on top of the frequencies of dialogue and sibilance and can be a real problem. Unless you have something that's like this, which is just a general din. Where you look at the waveform and you see nothing really that's going to poke out here. And that can be really, really helpful. But even more helpful if you layer them all together. You can have a lot more, whoa. Oh, because I opened the wrong thing. We want this one. Because you can have a lot more control because everything's layered and nice and neat. Right, so that really weird one of all these horns are now way, way back. And we have some other horns that we might leave in here that are a little closer. There's that motorcycle. Now that's a really nice din of things for a stereo ambience. That's not going to get in the way of the dialogue now. It's low enough and we have enough bandwidth support all over the frequency spectrum with these two stereo ambiences to create a nice front ambience that would just be really nice and really lovely for urban. So that's kind of the just giving you a general idea about what kinds of ambiences you're going to be dealing with here as you move into mixing. Mono ambiences aren't the best. You typically want to have something that is either stereo or surround or something like that. But when used correctly, a mono ambience can be even better sometimes than a typically recorded stereo. This is just an industry ambience. Pretty nominal, right? Plenty long. You can see up here, it's 2 minutes and 30-ish, so plenty long. So there's a couple things we can do with the mono ambience. To make it stereo, obviously we don't put ambiences in the center channel. You can, but it limits the bandwidth that we really need for dialogue and other strong sounds that would go there. We typically put our ambiences left and right surround, et cetera, depending on your surround setup. So we want something that's stereo. Now, the easiest thing to do, not necessarily the best, but is just add some kind of a stereo, maximizer, some kind of a stereo imager like this. Waves has this one that's pretty cool. And you've got that rotation, which is cool. And then we have just the actual width. Which is pretty cool. I mean, that's obviously way, way wider than this. I mean, that's really, really strong. The problem with this is that sometimes it's not very mono compatible, and we'll see what this like. We'll turn this on, and then we'll hit this little button here, which basically sums everything to mono. So there's everything in mono. There's everything in stereo. And you can see that the extreme amount of phase cancellation that happens using this plugin in mid-side mode makes it almost completely cancel. So that if you ever had to take your surround channels, or sorry, your stereo channels, or left and right in this case, and if they were ever summed to mono, even if it was on a laptop or on an where the speakers are very close together, or on an iPhone where the speakers are in mono, you're going to lose this ambience. Right? It's gone. It's history. Here is another way of doing it. You can use Isotope, and we can use Ozone 7, the imager. We'll see how this one is. With this one, you have multiple bands that you can choose to make wider. We'll turn this on. We'll turn this up. We don't need that. Something like this. And it's wider, but it's also affecting the sound, right? You can hear the phasing. And let's see about its mono compatibility. Really mono compatible, which is nice, which means that the volume isn't changing. But in stereo, it's kind of weird, right? It's got that weird kind of sound to it. Let's see what Audition will do for us. Here we go. It's not really able to do very much because it's already working on a mono signal, and that makes it very difficult for it to work. Let's try just center channel. I know. So let's, yeah, this isn't really going to work either. So you're really limited to something that is mono compatible, but adds kind of weirdness to it, or not mono compatible and really, really wide. Logic Pro has a plugin. Their expander is mono compatible and does a really good job with this kind of thing, but if you don't have Logic, you're out of luck. So what else can we do? Well, this is what I would normally do anyway. Since the nature of stereo is really to fool the brain into thinking that something's stereo, you have two similar but different sounding sounds panned hard left and hard right. That's all you need to do. And because this is so nice and long, we can cut this in the middle. We can take this and go like this. Now, granted, we have double the ambience. But if we take the pan on this one and make it left, and the pan on this one and make it right, and we know it's mono compatible. If I go mono, same volume, right? No phase issues, no nothing, and it's wildly panoramic. And absolutely no looping. I can take this, go like this, well, maybe this. And I also don't have my crossfades anymore in the same place, which is awesome. And now they're even further out of sync. In fact, this would now to your brain be this would be completely different sound because they are no longer in the same sync that they were here. So your brain's going to think this is completely different, ongoing sound. You can keep doing this. And to me, this is the best way to deal with mono ambiences, and maybe sometimes better than a straight stereo ambience. Listen to this. Now, this is just heavy traffic. In fact, let me pull up a ambience that is just stereo. That's mono. Let's come up with the sorter. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Sorter. Yeah, this one's stereo. Turn this channel on. Here it is in stereo. Sure, you get that, no problem. I'm going to drop this into this channel, which is now left. I'm going to drop this one into this one, which is now right. And you're getting the same thing that we had when it was stereo. It's only playing the left channel here and the right channel here. But watch what happens if I do this. I'm going to take these two. I'm going to cut them in half. I'm going to kill this side. I'm going to go to the slip tool, which, by the way, the slip tool is something that many digital audio workstations don't have, which is really cool. And now try this. See how much more stereo that is? That's way more stereo than this. Or this. I mean, that's crazy super wide. And you're like, well, yeah, but Mark, that's stereo already. Well, not how this is acting. This is only playing one mono side, and this is playing the other mono side. And granted, they were stereo already, but because I've slipped them in time, they're even more, your brain considers it even more stereo. So there's no reason why you can't use a mono ambience as long as it's long enough and it's going to create the kind of sound you want. Front and back ambiences, or front and surround, are really a misunderstood art. A lot of people that I see, just to save time or whatever, will take their traffic stereo ambience that they have, and then in order to make it feel like it's, in the surround speakers, they'll just do this. They'll just drag it down and go, oh, well, now I have it in surround. And what we have here is you're in headphones, I hope. Otherwise, this is not going to sound very good in speakers. But we're using Spatial Audio Designer to put this track in the front speakers and this track in the rear speakers virtually in your headphones, which is pretty cool. Here's rear. Here's front. Obviously different volumes, but if I make these the same, rear speakers, front, and then together, it's just not that interesting. Not at all. And even if I take this track and say, okay, well, we're going to slip it so it sounds a little more interesting. You just really have a lot more of the same noise. Obviously, it's way, way too loud. But what's far more interesting to me is in the surround speakers, putting something that makes sense, but that is very different, like city birds. And let's get this mix correct here. Panning the birds around to there. That's a lot more interesting to me. I got plenty of power here with this, which I can bring up if I need more. And obviously I can add layers, but to have stuff in the background that's not so bandwidth intensive is really important, but still gives me the sense of surround, of immersion. Now, obviously I can put the birds in the front too and put more in the back, but I like the minimalist approach where we keep those surround speakers just for ambiences until we really want to send something powerful back there. And when I say ambiences, I mean light ambiences like this. And when we mix them correctly, it'll all feel great. Let's try another one. So here we are with Desert Night. Sure, no problem. And then we have this Desert Night. It's similar, but it's more singular, right? It's the Desert Crickets, singular. Now, granted, it's mono, and we know what to do with mono channels. We'll go, even though this is a little short, just for demonstration purposes. We'll go like this. We'll go like this. And then I need to go to the mix window and set it up to be sent to the correct place, which is bus B. Bus B is basically feeding our spatial audio designer mix with the 5.1, which we talk about extensively in the mix section. Mix volume. There we go. And we'll pan one hard left and one hard right to the surround. Get in there. There we go. Awesome. We'll make sure that we've slipped it. Nice and stereo. And we put them together. Should turn this one up. Just enough in that background where most of the work is happening in the foreground, which it should, but enough is in the background, very light, very low, so it'll give us enough immersion to be happy. And we're good. So to sum up, your ambiences front and back, you can keep them the same, and that's totally fine. But I like the stronger ambiences, the more colorful ambiences or complicated ambiences in the front, and simpler ones in the back that are not the same at all, but give us that immersion. When we get to 7.1, you do the same thing. You add another set of separate ambiences to the sides, the side fills, and then let's talk about height. For height ambiences, it's sort of a little bit different than just straight surround. Part of the reason height is so interesting is because of the fight or flight nature of human beings. And since most of our threats as predators on the planet come from us straight ahead, in the front, in the center channel, as it were, we can put lots of loud, scary things in front of people, and we're used to it. But we as predators have almost no defense mechanisms for stuff that happens above us in the height speaker. So you can put an ambience up there, crickets or something like this. But as soon as you put a chimpanzee up there, people start freaking out. It's a flight response, to run. Oh, something's above me. It's going to drop on me. So we really want to be careful when we're putting immersion in height speakers in 11.1 or 9.1 or anything else. Right now, we are running a spatial audio designer with 11.1. That's a 7.1 down and then a quad of speakers up, which is pretty cool. In fact, let's take these and bend them back to where they should be. Right now, these are all in the front, so we'll pull the surround speakers back. Oh, sorry, they're down. No, they're correct. That's actually going underneath. You see the little head-looking dude? It's actually going underneath, so we'll pull that. It's actually all correct. All right, good. So here's our traffic noise. Let's go up and double-check our traffic. Yes, there it is. Traffic. That's just straight left and right. If we turn this off, we can go straight to the height speakers. Here using these special buses. You can feel the difference between that and this. But we don't really recommend putting straight direct signal into the height speakers because all you're doing is making more noise. It's kind of diluting the panoramic spectra. What you want to do is have something different up in those height speakers, something subtle, something that's not going to make people jump out of their skin until you're ready for them to do so. So one of the things we can do is, if you're pressed for time and you're pressed for content, is just put a reverb unit up there. Check this out. And you can see here, I've got a stereo, or rather the surround reverb instantiated. This is the Adobe Surround Reverb. And you can see it's doing left and right, and then left and surround. I've turned off the center and LFE channels so that they're not messing around. Plus, in the quad in 11.1, there's only left and right, front and back. But when you mix that with this, it makes for a really, really nice full ambience. That's the cheap way to do it. The nice way to do it is to leave your traffic here, your main traffic there, and then take those birds that we talked about and add them to the height. So here they are in the front. Looks like I panned them strangely. There they are in the front now. Now let's add them to the height. And here they are, front height, surround height. We'll kind of mono them just for kicks. And then here they are in the surround height, in the height reverb, which is its own kind of cool thing, that what you might do is mix that with the direct signal in the surrounds. So that the reverb of the birds tweeting is going up like from the buildings or whatever, and then bring in your traffic. And you might put a little height reverb from the traffic up in the height speakers, just a little. Obviously, it's way too loud. But for surround, for height, we want to be really careful. Something subtle, something that obviously sounds nothing like what's in the bottom speakers, but stuff that gives us a sense of safety, that there's no snakes up there ready to drop on us. Reverbs, alternate sounds, things like that, that give us a sense of safety. So that when we want to drop things on people or have spaceships whoosh by or weird things above, we do that and people go crazy. So why do we layer ambiences? If they're going to be that low anyway in the mix, why bother layering? Well, the same reason we layer sound effects, for nuance and really adding that $50 million impact. That's what we do in big time Hollywood. We want everything to feel, to get that to 7,000 impulses that your brain is rejecting. Sometimes we need to add more. So let's go back to this industry example. Just as a simple example, we have a mono to stereo conversion where we've slipped, the mono channel to make it stereo, and then pan one left and pan one right. I'm going to bring this volume way down. And that's a pretty good ambience, actually. That's pretty nice. It's not going to get in the way of our dialogue too much, and that's great. But to really give it some niceties, we want to add more. We want to add another layer to it, and maybe even pan it slightly differently. This is a really obnoxious sound. Maybe make it a little more mono. So now we have a much larger panorama of sounds. And we might just, let's say it was in an urban traffic zone, we might add some traffic to it. And then a little EQ. just so the traffic's not blaring through because it would theoretically be outside. And that's a really nice deep ambience. So that's a far, far cry from this. And you're like, well, but Mark, that's really, really busy. Well, obviously, it depends on, your content and what you're actually seeing. What's on the picture is there, and that's what matters. But for an ambience that was in New York traffic, I'm taking up basically 6 tracks. Well, actually 8 tracks just to do ambience, and that's no skin off anybody's nose. And this would be for stereo. What? I know, stereo. So ambiences are you're going to take up some channels with ambiences, to be sure, to get them so that we're having as many impulses ignored by the brain as possible. And obviously, we've bussed them to the ambience bus so that we can make them very low. Ambiences, like all the other disciplines, have to be able to be layered in that sonic cube so that they're not bashing against some other sound that's important, like dialogue, music, or certainly sound effects themselves. Now, most of the time, ambiences don't have a problem because they're so low in the mix. They're just down there. But if you happen to have something like this New York traffic, that's a pretty loud sound. Not that it would ever be that loud, but you'll want to always make sure that you are doing some form of notch EQ to take what would be where the dialogue would go out of this. So there's absolutely no chance of clashing. Also, in surround, of course, the dialogue's coming out of the center channel, but this is what we want to do. The fundamental frequency, as we've said before, of the human voice, which we want to avoid, is in women and in men generally around 100 hertz and women around 150 hertz. So we take that kind of coefficient and we would reduce kind of something like this pretty significantly. The next frequencies that we want to get rid of are where the sibilants would be. And your sibilants and fricatives and consonances are generally 5K out to 8K. We don't want to make that big of a dip because then you're really affecting the nature of the sound of in this case, the ambience here, something like this. And then lastly, the energy in the voice generally is around 1300 hertz-ish, kind of like that. And we want to dip that as well. And this kind of thing, by no means is this, the de facto standard as to what you should be doing. You should check this out on a meter and make sure your dialogue is, in fact, somewhere in these zones. Sometimes it isn't, but because of people are yelling. When people are yelling, typically everything gets moved up in the frequency spectrum. But generally, this is it. And you notice it doesn't affect your ambiences that much if I turn it off. Almost make the sound better. We want to do this also when you've got a situation where there's a sound effect that has to happen and the ambiences may be getting involved. Again, put up on a meter, something like this. Let's go to effects, and you can do something as simple as pull up isotope ozone 7. And of course, ozone 7 has the EQ built in that you'd want to use. And you can just look at it, whatever that sound effect might be, and you go, oh, these frequencies here, right. And then you just dial them out in the EQ on your ambiences that's offending. So just because something's low doesn't always mean that it's out of the way. Almost always, but just be sure that you're not pulling a fader down on ambiences that may just have a frequency that needs to be brought down. The action scene is so much fun. There's so many great ambiences throughout this whole thing. And we had such a heck of a time getting the actual ambience of the room out that it's only fitting that we add some cool things back in. So I've just kind of thrown some sounds in here. I'm going to introduce them to you and then show you about cutting between cuts. I know, Department of Redundancy Department, but you'll get it. So for her, what I decided to do is as she's coming left to right and he's going right to left, I've decided to create different ambiences for each one of them until they finally come together. So here's for her first ambience, which is this giant, cool kind of din. And I wanted to create ambiences for her that were a little, not so nice, not so even. Obviously, we're listening to them way too loud, but I just want to show you. Here's a factory boiler for him. And check this sound out as a layer for him. It's an industry balling machine or baling machine. I have no idea what that is, but it's cool. And then we go back to her ambience again. This is what they sound like all together. And then I've added a different industry machine. Actually, I believe I've taken one of hers and mixed it in with a different factory ambience. Here's this one. Kind of like he's on this metallic buzzing thing as if it's got life to it. And then just a whine, which I think we used up here. And then when she's here and she does all of her dialogue, I added back in this industry ambience. But I also love this drain. Like stuff was just going right down the drain here, right next to her. I just thought that was so cool. And there's one more here. We want to use, let's see, this one for his little insert shot. So I go back to that and this and together, which is super cool. There's also another insert right here. Definitely that we want to hit, and I mark it. Awesome. And I'll just drag this over and copy. I missed it. And then from here to here, time-wise, we'll just kind of do a little cut. We'll tighten it up later. And then once they meet in this, for the rest of this scene, we really don't change ambiences because now they're together. And what I've added is our basic industry ambience with electric buzz. And when we were actually there at the location, there were the lights and they were actually buzzing like crazy. And it sounded just like this. So I thought it only fitting that we have that there. We might add some more fun to it. But for now, let's get to the edit. I'm going to put this on all ambiences. Here we go. I'm going to look in here at our marker position, which is the frame where it starts. And I'm just going to go like this because we hate that fade in stuff. Let's find where the next frame is, which should be right there at 23/22. I'm going to drag this there. We're going to do the same thing with this. And we'll do our fades. Oops, let's do them together. Fabulous. And then we'll move to the next bit here. Means this needs to be extended to this and extended to this. And if we go to that marker, that's at 17, we're looking for 18 to show up. That's where that goes. So we have our one frame cross fade out. And then the same thing for this. We hate that fade in. I'm going to guess we're going to be about there. Same with this. We hate that fade in. I'm going to start here, select them both, and a crossfade. So you can feel what that feels like at one frame going out on the other side of the cut. Now, if you do it too early, if you do the cut, oh, I did the wrong thing, didn't I? If you do the cut too early, check out what happens. I'm going to move all these over here so that now it's one frame early. Check out what happens. Here, there's a little bit of a bump. And if we go back to our one frame, yeah, nice and seamless that is. Same thing happens if we bring this in late If we bring the incoming in late, watch this. Again, a bump. And worst case, I've seen this where we just go here and do the one fade out, and you know what's going to happen now. I'm in an actual hole. So we want these to overlap. Undo, undo, undo. By one frame, so that when we're here, we actually have double ambiences for just a moment. It's nice and seamless. Okay, here's our next edit point. We'll bring this to here. We'll bring this to here. Not like that. We're going to bring just the right portion. And we're going to go here. We're going to look for 2. There's 2. These come here. Going to go back to the marker and take a little eyeball guess that that's about 1 frame there. And we're going to crossfade these. And you're like, Mark, hey, man, there's that fade in nonsense. I know. I'm going to go up here to the slip tool, which is the Y key. I'm going to take all of these and just bring them over. Another nice and easy way of doing that. Beautiful. And notice it cuts perfectly. Fantastic. We're moving on. This is fun. This part is sort of fun. It's nice and easy, cathartic work. And let's see here. That might just be 1 frame. Let's see. There's 19. Nope. 18. That's where it should go. Wrong button. Thank you. And I've lost my place already. Right there. Oh, gotta move them. And the crossfade. And then take a little guesstimate that the next frame is about there. Cool. We'll do the Y tool. Get through that silly fade. And moving on to the next edit. Right here. And for these, because they've already got kind of their fades built in, we'll just, they're already over. I'm just going to cut these. 17, 16. Is this in the right place? Let's make sure the marker's in the right place. Marker should be right here. And that's a frame right there. Cut. Just like that, which would make this one about there. This one about there. Fabulous. Next marker. We take a look, make sure this is in the same place. Yeah, that's pretty right. There's it. Nope, it's wrong. It needs to be here. That's the frame for these guys. And we'll hit the Y tool, bring over the loud bits. And these guys will have about the same thing. Just basic editing here. Oops, without that kind of not basic editing. And the next marker. Let's make sure this is in the right place. Should be here. It's 1 frame off. That's the frame we want for these guys. Looks like they're already loud, which I love. Should make this about there. Fabulous. Don't think we have too many more markers. Yeah, that's about right. Nope, it's wrong. Who put these markers in? That's the frame we want for this guy and this guy. Y tool. Slide that stuff in. Making this about right here and this about right here. You can see it's actually locking, which is kind of helpful, to the frame. Okay, let's double check this marker. Should be there, one frame off, unfortunately. That's the frame this wants to go to for the electricity buzz. We're almost there. We're going to make our fades. That would make this one about, oops, don't want to move all of it, just the right boundary. Like that. And why is that not working? Oh, I know why, because the output is not going to the ambience bus. That's it. Go to the ambience bus. Now you'll be able to solo. Love it. Cool. Now we've got all this put together. Didn't take too long, right? Not too painful. Now let's do a little mixing just to see what's going on here. I'll go to a mixer because I'd rather look at faders than knobs any day. It'll be about like that. We might roll some of those low frequencies off. Something like that. Very nice, very nice. I'm gonna have to mix that, but we're getting the right idea. There's that nice juicy. That's so cool. Plenty of fun stuff going on in ambience land. Let's move on here. And this little ambience should just be annoying enough. I mean, when we shot, it was like this. It was really, really loud. What we might want to do is add just its own little reverb because I've not created a reverb bus for this. And that's okay. Doesn't need that much stuff. We'll give it maybe under the bridge. Let's see. There we go. Big shit. Beautiful. So there's our ambiences for the action scene. Again, one frame between cuts, one frame overlapping. Don't get confused or lose faith that it does require that one frame. And you can put these on the same track if you like, and then the crossfade needs to be basically one frame each direction, which would make it basically 2 frames. Yeah, together this crossfade is a 2-frame situation. 1 frame in, 1 frame out. Cool. So just briefly, let's take a look at the ENG, the news sequence for what we've done for ambience. It's pretty simple because we also know this is going to be a stereo delivery. We'll do a little quick mix and surround, but here's the general gist.
Mr. Snow.
Let's just solo these tracks. In fact, we can just solo the bus here. Pretty useful, pretty useful. 4 stereo ambiences are the equivalent of 8 mono tracks. And we'll solo each one of these individually now. So this is just people kind of sort of semi-urban, suburban people chatting. There's obviously a lot more people in this ambience than there are on the screen. And we've panned them sort of left, and we may mess with that in the mix, but just to keep them separate for now. That's pretty cool. Here's some sprinklers that are super dope. right? All you can think of is, suburbia. And we had, interestingly, we had a sprinkler that was only at this speed.
Hearing interesting.
Sorry, this speed. And it did not engender the suburbia feel. It only engendered like a park with those ones that turn all the way around. But only these ones, those little rain birds that go back and forth and back and forth, that feels like, you plugged your hose into it at home, and that's good. Now this one here is it should be stereofied. It should be, like this, and we'll deal with the spread once we get it there. Pretty simple. Birds and stuff. And then another track of the same. In fact, you put these together. Get in there. And that's a really nice wide ambience that when we get to the mix, we will put together. Notice what we've done with these edits and how we've brought these together. Some of these tracks just aren't long enough. Simple crossfades to bring these together. And, this is just the same thing looped over and over, and some of these loops are pretty small. But you won't notice looping because you've got 3 other tracks that are not looped at all that are making up for in your mind, and you never will hear that this loops.
Plants, and these are not just plants.
You're just never going to hear it. It isn't going to work. Plus, on top of the fact that people are speaking and there's little kids running in the background here, it's really super, super useful. So there's no cuts in this per se. We're not because this one scene, but I just wanted to show you how we did this very basic one. Let's look at another one. Let's talk about ambiences for the Macbeth scene. Not a lot to be done here in this scene. We basically want to create an overall room sense for this, and the whole scene takes place obviously opposite a dinner happening in the other room, if you know Macbeth at all. If you don't, that's what's happening. And here's what we've designed for this. It's a surround ambience in terms of its architecture. It's very, very low. I'm going to turn it up. And one of the things that we talk about is putting audiences to sleep. And while your brain is receiving 7,000 things a second, one of the most powerful things you can do to enhance the brain's ability to want to go to sleep is add periodic sounds. Periodic meaning things that happen regularly at regular intervals. And the thing that modern society is so used to tuning out are, see if you can listen. Yeah, clocks. A very subtle clock in the background. If we speed it up, you can totally hear it in there. And it's very, very subtle and very, very nice. And we keep this nice stereo ambience deep in the background. We've looped it at 30 seconds or so, a little bit longer actually. And so no one knows or feels that there's any kind of looping going on. Here's the walla in the background that in this case, I'm considering an ambience, even though officially it would be a sound effect. And by now you can tell what we're doing here is just adding this, low pass or whatever, high shelf, whatever you want to call it, just to make it feel like they're in the other room. And we might also add a little high pass, just a little bit. Not too much. And the way it's set up and recorded, it's already kind of sound like they're in the other room. And then for the surrounds and maybe for some extra pizzazz, we've added this. And you're like, Mark, they're not outside. I know, they're inside, but it is nighttime. And, you know, we're going back to the 20s kind of vibe. They're not in urban America. They're somewhere else, let's say. Actually, it wouldn't be America anyway. It'd be England. Anyway, so I'm saying let's add some background crickets in the background and from the department of the redundancy department. Obviously, we're not going to leave them like this. We're going to do something similar to what we did in the other channel. We're going to add EQ, parametric equalizer. Now, I'm doing something that really should be done in the mix, but I just want to do it for you here. Something very similar to what you just saw. Like so. Just enough of that high frequency stuff to make it worthwhile. And then we're going to edit this real simply, like, so that it will loop. It's a huge long file, so we won't have any trouble with the sounding of loops, as if it sounded like it were looping. I'll just go here and deal with that crossfade at the end later. It's interesting to notice that when you have the ambiences mixed correctly, you completely forget about that, like this room tone. Can you find the room tone now that I've added the crickets? That's a huge difference with it out versus with it in. And the clock very, very subtly in the background. If I take out the crickets, see how it just doesn't have the same feel as though they're in? Now, one of the things that we'll do is when she turns on this pan, we'll cut. Now we're cutting into a different direction. That crowd noise is going to pan to the rear speakers, and we'll do all this in the mix right there. And now when we cut to him here, we're actually looking toward the crowd, and then we'll pan the crowd towards the middle. So this is where, you know, panning of ambiences becomes something that will becomes important, but not for us here in the creation of our ambiences. Let's check out another example. For the donut scene, you would at one point think there's not a lot of ambiences to be put in because there's so much sound effects going on. But you can't have it without. And even though we've got a ton of stuff happening, I mean, all over the place in this car, there's tons of things.
Right, I'll be just fine. Don't you get excited.
With your hand holding my...
There's lots of ambiences in there already. We never want to be caught flat-footed. We always want to have our ambiences at the ready should we need them for something. Now, first of all, this section...
Roger, isn't that Chelsea from...
You've got a driving car, right? A car that's supposedly moving and steering and all of these things. And, well, without the ambiences in there, I'm going to show you the difference. So now that they've stopped, well, let's see here. They're going to go out here to the tire skid. All of that. Here are the ambiences that we added for the outside part. Not a problem, just a little idle. And then a little early morning suburban birds. No problem at all. And then let's see. What we want to do for every ambience is start and make sure that it is one frame. And we have to kind of look down here because there isn't a way in Audition to be able to do one frame accurately. You just kind of have to look at the... And by do, I mean select it and edit it. So we're going to go like this.
can't be safe.
not to do that.
Turn around.
And then the birds are going to jump out. And now we have a different ambience in here. So the inside, we've added an ambience. And check out what it sounds like. Oh, I got to go this way.
Your hand holding mine.
Without.
Chelsea. Oh, it's
See
so
how
funny to see you
barren it feels?
Trekking along the street like that.
And we'll blend this with the ambiences that are already in there. Even though it's just 2 tracks, it should be more than enough. And then they get through all of this. That's fine. And then there's a crash. And then we're back here to the outside. And we decided to use an additional suburban neighborhood sound with some nice doggies. And the birds again. And then we're back here. We just cut them back in after this break for Natalie as well. And that's pretty much it. Not a lot of special stuff here, but what I wanted to show you is the difference between ambiences out and ambiences in. So here's ambiences in,
Right, I'll be just fine. Don't you get excited.
With your hand holding
and then ambiences out while they're driving.
the highest mountain. Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School Group?
In,
Right, I'll be just fine. Don't you get excited.
With your
out.
the highest mountain.
It just feels so weird that they're driving and there's no background noise. Now, we've gone through with RX and cleaned this up some of the background noise, so that we can add our own ambiences in, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's try that. Just going to go back here to this. I'm in my sound effects folder. I'm going to say SUV. Let's see what we've got in the world of SUV. Let's go to the top, start, idle, off, start, revs, something that sounds like driving. Now, let's try this. Hopefully it's interior driving. Let's see what this one is. That's interesting. How about this one? Okay, it sounds kind of fast. Maybe. Let's see what else we've got. SUV by, start, accelerate, driving. Here's another one. Okay, about this one. Kind of getting the idea that SUVs sort of sound the same. Okay. A little bass here. About this one. That one's got a lot more flavor to it. I like it. That's outside. Okay, I'm not sure about that one. How about these? That's a buy. Trucks, SUV, pass gravel, pull away. All right, well, let's see. One of these here I think will do. I think it was maybe this one. Maybe it was this one. Probably a little fast. Try the 4 here. Yeah, that's definitely an interior. Okay, so let's try this. We're going to put this over here on one track. This ambience 1. We're going to just drop this old girl in there. Computes it. And here we go. The beginning starts right here. So let's take a look. We want to get rid of this silly fade. Hate fades and sound effects. Hate that. Let's see how it goes.
With your hand holding mine, I can climb the highest mountain. Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School Group?
Yep.
Honey, what you doing here talking out
You
here
know,
on
I
the
thought
street?
they-
Street, it can't be safe.
Not to
And then that's all we would need of it just while they're driving. Bring this over to here for now. It's okay.
I can climb the highest mountain. Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School Group?
Yep.
Honey, what's she doing hitchhiking out here on the
I thought
street?
they
I can climb the highest mountain. Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School Group?
Yep.
Honey, what's she doing hitchhiking out here on
I
the
thought
street?
they
I can climb the highest mountain. Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School Group?
Yep.
Honey, what's she doing hitchhiking?
I'm just taking out that that's going on in there.
I can climb the highest mountain. Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School Group?
Yep.
Honey, what's she doing hitchhiking? I can climb the highest mountain. Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School Group?
Yep.
Honey, what's she doing hitchhiking out here on the street?
So that's a nice static thing. Now let's find us some gears, and we may have to cheat. May not get to use SUV. How about internal? Wait, let's do gear. Car. Gear. Car interior V8 through gears. This might be really, really rough. Way too much. Okay, let's try this. How about transportation car drive interior? Let's see. That's pretty awesome. Let's see if we can add that to this. Without erasing anything too significant. Oh, I think we did. Way. Let's drop it into 3. And we'll get rid of this. See what this feels like. Feels a lot more reasonable to me. Yep. Love it. We're going to take the razor tool, cut this old girl, and do our standard crossfades. Right to here. And then going back. Same with our truck that we added. And this has a massive low frequency. You probably can't hear it. You can just see it in the waveform. All the super low frequencies, which we definitely want to cut off. And EQ, parametric equalizer. Here, big cutoff, anything below 100 or so. Maybe there. Nice. I think we want to help out some of these higher frequencies, just so it's a little louder, without making the whole thing louder. There we go.
Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School?
That feels a lot better to me.
With your hand holding mine, I can climb the highest mountain.
Now check that out versus turning the ambience bus off altogether.
With your hand holding mine, I can climb the highest mountain.
And back on.
Roger, isn't that Chelsea from Serenity Sunday School Group?
Just feels stupid without it. So that's the general ambiences for donuts. Not very complicated, but absolutely important. Let's try something else. Now, the beach scene has caused us nothing but trouble, as we had planned for it to. But in the world of ambiences, it's not that big of a deal. The first thing we have to deal with any ambience is making sure that anything in the environment isn't or won't affect our ambiences. And of course, the first thing we want to deal with here is the surf going to be a problem? Let's take a look here. I mean, there's some small waves here in the front, but I don't think we're going to have a problem with those. And then we're really not looking at the surf at all. in any kind of strong wave capacity. At all throughout the rest of this scene. The scene, even here, there's not really any big surf. So we can have what we call ND surf or nondescript surf anywhere in here. And we also have the surf that's going on from the room tone here to help us with the dialogue. So that's going to be in the center channel. And out here in the left and right and otherwise, we're going to have some other things. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Basic seagulls. And some background surf, not a problem. A different kind of surf and seagulls, different seagulls. And because we want it, even though there's not a single person on this beach, we want it to feel like there's maybe some more people there. A little bit of this. Now, unfortunately, this particular sound effect has a lot of really rude and loud things that show up. Like some yelling people doing some football. I don't really want that. We just take this, we go Command K, we Shift Delete, and with a little crossfade, it's over. So let's see here. We want to cut out our silly crossfade, or the silly fade-ins that they've given us, which we absolutely despise. Where does the beginning of this file happen? Somewhere about here. Looks about right. We'll just jump over to it. We'll Command K and get rid of it. Same with this one here. Surf starts about there. We'll Command K it. And same with the beach. I mean, I don't know why they do this. It's supposed to be nice, but all it does is cost me this amount of time. And then we just drag all of these together for our one frame fade in. Nice. Very good. We're not worrying about the mix. We're not worrying really about levels, although we do want to check to make sure that it's going to work, so we can do that here at this point. I think it'll be more than ample, especially in a panoramic sense, for us to pan this stuff all around. Okay, and then it's just a matter of copying the ambiences. And this one I think goes, oh no, it doesn't yet go all the way out. So we'll just take this whole thing here, copy the whole thing, give it a crossfade. Where's the end? End of file is here. We'll just take these, copy them over. This is another really simple scene in that there aren't any actual cuts between ambiences. So, there's no real problem with us having to do panning per se. We'll probably pan when they get to this part, the ambiences. We might do a little pan in the mix, but otherwise, nah, we're doing okay. Pretty simple stuff. We Command K, just stuff we've learned in the edit section, edit volume. We'll go to the next frame. That's the frame. Oh, that isn't the end after all. We're still fading out. 21 will be about there. And then come back to 20. And we take all of you and fade you out. Awesome. So that's kind of it. Sorry, not much interest. Of all the things that would be difficult, this beach scene has been our nemesis. But here in the ambience world, I think we'll be just fine with these 6 tracks.
It's so unlikely that ambiences matter as much as they do. Just this little going on in the background. But the more channels of surround that we use, the more critical that immersive element of ambiences becomes. And if we don't do them right, or if they're too loud or too soft, which we'll talk about in the mix section, all is lost in the world of immersion, and you've lost your audiences. They're just doing this. So when we get this ambient section right, and you may have to go back and watch it a couple times, there's a lot in here. It seems so simple, but it's not. It's not intuitive, and we gotta get this right. Very technical, but when we do, it's like everything pops in your mix. Everything pops in the movie, and it's Hollywood magic. We'll see you in post.